Hello. So I'm always curious about what's going on inside of my vector here. Since there's not many resources about the Krytac Kriss vector on the internet, I might as well try to help the community out here and show you. I'm gonna start by taking the sling off, actually. Yeah, it's gonna get in the way. Both are on QD, so they should pop off relatively easy. There you go. Toss this aside for a moment. Next, I'll take this mock bolt release, bolt catch thing out. It literally doesn't do anything. It's just there to press for fun. Takes a, where is it? Size 2.5 hex. Comes out quite easily now that I've done this like 1,000 times. And while you're working on the gun, you don't actually need to leave this in. It doesn't hold anything there. If you're working on the gun, just leave that off so you can take the gear box in and out quickly as you work on it. Next, these 3 screws, which will take a size 3 metric hex. Everything on here is metric. I don't believe in screw holders. I really should though. And then on the next set of screws will be on the back side. I have a MS1 arms mag release here, so my 2 screws here are going to be size 2.5, but on yours, it'll probably be the same on the other side, size 3s. This comes off, switch back to the size 3 for the last screw over here. All right. Now, I should have done this first, to be honest. You're gonna need to remove the spring here, spring guide thing. Not really confident in jamming a sharp pointed object towards myself, so I use a pin instead. And the spring guide will come out with the spring. You could probably use something better than this for pre-compression, but I had the perfect size tubing to preload this spring. It's just some PVC piping, 3/8 inch inner diameter. Actually, it's almost half an inch. I don't know inch math, but it's about 11.5 millimeter inner diameter, maybe 12, and this is not zeroed. At this point, you should be able to pull the lower front receiver out, but I have a flashlight plug here, which I need to remove first before I do that. It should come off like that. All right, and from here, your tappet linkage thing might fall out of the right-hand side of the weapon. Keep that safe. Then push the rest of your body pins out. Add some BBs in there, apparently. Do you have any more? Nope. And then the upper receiver comes off. Then you can throw your upper receiver behind you, out of the way. Next, we got the motor cage, which can be unscrewed from the right-hand side of your vector. While you're unscrewing it, I suggest you hold the cage in place here. And then after you take the screws out, hold the motor down as you remove the cage. Because if you don't hold it down, the spring on the motor would push up here and tug on your wires a little bit. Then remove your wires and then remove your motor. According to JHQ's advice, I will be eventually replacing this guy with a warhead motor. My motor here is a little special because I have this little collar here that sits around the axle and prevents the pinion from, or rather prevents the axle in general from oscillating forward and backwards. Because, I'm not sure if one of these stock motors has the problem, but if you look closely, the axle actually shifts forward and backward. And that's a problem to me. I'm not sure if it's a problem to many others, but personally I don't like my pinion gear moving around. So I 3D printed a little collar here to prevent the pinion from moving around and just jammed it on. Okay, put that aside. Next we got these 2 screws holding the outer barrel on. Phillips size 2, a number 2 is the one I used for all of the gearbox screws. Just be careful about these guys here. Don't chomp on it when you go for that screw. And then we have 4 more screws here holding 2 plates holding the charging handle in place that slides back and forth. In order to open the gearbox, you will, at minimum, have to remove the top 2 screws here, and as well as the plate they were on. You can leave this one on if you're lazy. If you're rapid prototyping, you should just take that off and remove the charging handle as well. I'll do that for the video. The screws on this side are shorter. The screws on top are longer. This short. Now I'm going to remove the other 2 screws on this side that are holding the outer barrel in place, here and here. Then out comes this one. Alright, that's your outer barrel, as well as your flash hider if you have one on it. For me, I have to unattach my tracer unit here. Then that should all come out. This is an EMG/maxx Pro, I believe. It has the flange here that holds BBs inside. So when you take the magazine out, you don't dump like 8 BBs on the floor. Oh, well, I mean, there's a hole there, so. Boop. We now have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 more screws to go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Next, the tappet plate here is under spring tension here, so I like to jam some sort of tool in this hole by the sector and hold the tappet plate down so it doesn't fly out as you take the other shell half off. I did not hold the tappet plate correctly, but that was the intent. From here, you remove that spring, and here's your tappet plate. Mine is reinforced at this leg here. I stuck it in a drill press, drilled a hole about 2 or 3 millimeters in diameter, and stuck a copper rod through. It's very rigid, and then snipped the excess off, because this leg is very, very, very prone to snapping under higher rates of fire. Next on the menu, we have some foam here that I stole from the maxx hopup packaging in these random triangles. I don't know if they actually do anything, but I put it there in hopes to dampen sound. Probably doesn't do jack shit. Next, we got the gears. There's my Rocket DSG. Looks a little worn down here because this is the same gear that I used when I was experimenting. I busted quite a few pistons. Actually, let's show you those. This is my bag of broken pistons. There are 2 aluminums in here. Don't do aluminums. I felt like trying them just for kicks. Usually you'll snap the back right off. I even secured this one down with JB Weld. How many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 pistons I've wrecked with this gun. And then we have a bevel gear, the Lonix spiral bevel. Very, very cool. And we have the stock Krytac spur gear. I just dropped shims. Please don't lose your shims. With the, I think this is Prometheus. Little red aluminum spacers here. You use those so you don't stack like 30 shims up to cover the distance. Next is the piston. I have an SHS blue piston with a bunch of teeth shaven off. AOE corrected, and there's only like 5 actual teeth here. There's a half tooth, and the second one has been completely ground down. SHS palm piston head with ball bearings. Taking this guy out. This is my cylinder. I don't know why there's a dent there. That's concerning. Luckily I have like 3 other cylinders here. Yeah, it lines up with the screw hole. Oh no, it's not an oversight. It's my fault. The screw for my Ace 1 Arms magazine catch probably went too deep and hit this. Probably my Ace 1 Arms screw going through this guy. This side should be safe because this is the factory screw. Anyway, I'm just gonna replace them now. Let's check compression. Absolutely nothing on the pole. And very weak compressing on the push. Let's try another O-ring. Oh, this is even worse. Let's try the ACR piston head. That's much better compression, so I'm gonna steal that O-ring from you. Put them on you. Nothing on the pole. Good compression on the push. All right, so I'm gonna grind these screws down so I don't bite into the piston, because that's bad. This is, I have no idea what cylinder. Probably, no, I have no idea. It's generic, came from some gun, I don't remember. But that's the one I'm gonna be using. I have about 3/8 of an inch worth of sorbo pad here. And actually, it's not even sorbo, this is neoprene. And it seems to be peeling a little bit. I'm gonna have to super glue that back down later. As well as a 21.25 millimeter maxx double O-ring nozzle. Very nice. Let's put it all together and see if that compression still works. Nothing on the pole. I'm getting bad compression. All right, everything's good there. And we have this guy, which is stock. It just moves the nozzle back and forth. I believe these are Krytac. No, these are Retroron's low profile bushings. They're pretty much flush down here. Okay, well, this is my gearbox all taken apart. Pretty much compatible with everything V2 except the cylinder head and tappet, I believe. Problems you might run into when working on this gearbox. First and foremost, this nub and that piece of metal right there will run into your sector gear if you shim it particularly high. I've shaved down probably 4 millimeters to clear it. And then moving on to the hop-up area here, I'm using a maxx/EMG Blue Pro hop-up here with the little tab. To fit this in, you'll need to completely remove this. It was about this high. It's now gone. You need to square this part off such that everything fits together like that. And the right half of the shell will need to be shaved down even more if you plan on using the tracer unit here, or the left side, depending on which side you put the tracer unit, of course. Yeah, you have to shave down both sides here. I just used a router because I don't have a mill. Router it down, hand file it smooth. You also may have to bend this microswitch flange just a little bit this way, so it engages with the cutoff lever earlier, so that when the sector spins around, it'll just click it immediately. That's pretty much everything here. Am I forgetting anything? Let's put it back together. Actually, I forgot I ordered one of these guys. It's a tiny little Prometheus 6.03 inner barrel for my Vector. It's a good thing I had this open. Let's get to swapping that. This is a, what's it called? Matrix, I believe? Ryusoku 70D hopup bucking? I don't remember. This is an airsoft patch, laser cut by Elvish Tack. I bought this on Amazon. They're perfect. They fit snug right in. Granted, you know what you're looking for. Airsoft patch on. Lube it a little bit for the bucking. Slip him on. Loop the bucking a little bit. Slip him on. And get the clip. Check if he's seated correctly. Looks like we're good. All right, now let's put the rest of the gearbox together. Make sure the cylinder is seated properly. Nozzle is seated on the slide thing. Piston in. And while I'm in this position, I'm going to show you my angle of engagement if it shows up on camera. When it's under compression, the neoprene pads here will be squished a little bit. And so the piston will move forward just slightly. And I'm not sure if the camera will pick up very well, but that is my angle of engagement. That is my AOE right there. Just about, what is that? 12:15, 12:10. You have the clock moves like that. And we got the tappet plate. Right, let's measure this fin here. The fin is about 9 millimeter on mine. Actually, this is a good time to demonstrate the issue that I was coming across that caused me to snap a lot of these legs off. Is this. Put the tab plate in. I'm going to emulate the rails on this half of the gearbox by putting my thumb here. Just pulling, 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 catches the piston, pulling, 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 and around here. The tab plate leg there cannot move back any farther. However, this gear will keep on tugging. Keep on tugging. It flexes around here because the tab plate can't move. It's trying to bend out of the way somehow. But since there's a rail here that will not flex at all, as such, it pulls this piece out like that. And what you'll see happen, I believe, is it will snap right off. Yeah, not very happy about that. But to solve that on my gearbox, I took my knife here and cut this ramp a little bit down. You'll have to trial and error it if you run into this problem. This tab plate leg moves up and down freely. That means the shell isn't clamping on it, which is good. And now I will cycle the gears to emulate what happens when the gun shoots. That is the noise of the anti-reversal latch. It's so noisy and is a lot. It's a huge factor of the clicking sounds when you fire the gun. And around here, I start running into a lot of resistance. It overcomes it though, because there's 18:1 torque ratio here. And after that, tappet drops. Up, snag, 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 drop. At 18:1, maybe 30 RPS single sector, that's probably not going to be too big of an issue. Maybe you snap after a few years of usage, but I predict that that is going to die very quickly if you put it into DSG. Now, with my reinforced and shaved tappet plate, put it all back together. Unfortunately, mine doesn't fall due to gravity anymore because the leg itself is a little deformed when I jammed the copper pin in. Pull, 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 and drop. Pull, 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 maxed out, and drop. A good way to test if you've cut your fin enough is to watch this linkage move back and forth. When you cycle the gun, it goes back and then maxes out at the back there. And then with like 1 or 2 more clicks, it should just drop. At no point should you ever feel resistance on these gears. If you do, you're gonna have to figure out what's going on with your tappet plate. I want to hold this down as I close the gearbox shell so that shim doesn't go flying. And now we are chopping on something. The piston is out of alignment. There we go. Shake test. All good to go. Piston still moves around without any resistance. Good. Double check my shims. Didn't get messed up in the process. Doesn't move. Doesn't move. Well, not that it doesn't move. It just moves very little. Spur good. Alright, next up is the motor. Black forward, red back. Pre-compress the motor spring. Put the cage on, and then find the screws that go in there. Again, careful not to crush these wires when you screw that in and out. Now, the hop-up should just slip up and in while the outer barrel stays out there. Up and in, outer barrel in, screw, get it ready, press and catch, and then screw. Just gonna get the outer barrel screwed on first. I'm going to now connect my tracer unit, of which I soldered directly to these battery contacts here. If you want a charging handle, I kind of like mine. Place the charging handle in position. Get one of the plates and then screw it in. Then get the other plate, put it in place, and screw that down. Now with the charging handle in place, you'll want to lift it up here, lock it in place so it doesn't move. Now we get the nozzle and make sure it's moving. It is. The tappet thingy in place. And that should be everything of the gearbox. Next, grab your lower and slide it in place. The charging handle will catch on this piece of the receiver. So lift it. Actually, I just slide it back. And that's all in place. And lock them forward again. Then get your size 3 hex and put your gearbox screws back in. While you're on this side, if you're finalizing the build, get your size 2.5 hex and put the bolt release in. Then, if you want, put your screw back in here while tugging on this spring here. So the charging handle is spring loaded. I personally never rack the charging handle, so I don't bother with that screw. Then I highly recommend that you put your spring guide back in at this state. It's much easier, especially if you have a M150 or higher in here. Make sure your spring is pointed the correct direction, coiled side towards guide. And then as you push it in, just lay it on top of the pin that's already in place, and the other hole should be exactly where you need it. So now one pin is holding the spring guide in place. Take the original one out, drop it on the floor. Just kidding, don't do that. Press it into place and put the pin in. And then once you have this pin in, take the one without the receiver off. Slowly let your pressure onto the spring guide. Put the other receiver on. Careful not to crunch the wires around here. Get everything into place. Compress the spring guide down and slip the body pin in. I actually forgot to do this, but you should probably put these screws in the lower receiver before putting the upper receiver on. As you can see though, you can do it out of order and you'll still be fine. For me, I have to put the flashlight back in here, which is a little bit janky. Just slip all that together in there, and then get the plug on the rails. Slip that in like that, and then weasel this wire through the slot I have, and everything's back together. Nice. Ground the screws down a little bit. Hopefully they don't chomp into my cylinder this time. While I have everything here, this is actually a good time to show how my battery setup is. Extended cap. This is a Turnigy Nanotech 1500 milliamp hour 11.13 cell battery. I believe it is 30 to 50 C. It's under some electrical tape right now because I have a little string here to yank it out. I just tuck the data cable into there, and I take this very securely electrical taped connector, plug them into that. Then I tuck them all together a little bit more, a little compact. Take this guy and jam it all together. Trust me, it's safe. Heh.